Emma had always been healthy, so when her doctor asked her to come in for a routine checkup, she didn't think much of it. The office was small, tucked away on a quiet street. It had always felt a bit outdated, but nothing too strange. When she arrived, the receptionist greeted her with a smile, but her eyes seemed distant, almost empty.
Dr. Keller will see you soon. Please have a seat,
she said, her voice too soft, too rehearsed. Emma sat down in the waiting room, thumbing through an old magazine. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, echoing in the otherwise silent room. It felt as though time was stretching, the minutes dragging on longer than they should. Her name was called after what seemed like an eternity. The nurse who led her to the examination room didn't speak. She moved mechanically, her expression blank, like someone going through the motions without truly being there. Emma shook off the odd feeling creeping up her spine and took a seat on the paper-covered table. Dr. Keller entered shortly after. He was an older man, with graying hair and a calm demeanor.
"How are you feeling today, Emma?"
he asked, his voice low and steady. "I'm fine. Just here for a checkup," she replied, but something about the way he looked at her made her feel uneasy. Instead of examining her in the usual manner, Dr. Keller simply stood in front of her, taking notes and asking her questions about her health. There was something strangely mechanical about his questions, routine, almost like he wasn't truly interested in the answers. She answered as best as she could, but her discomfort grew with every passing moment. After a few more minutes, he smiled again.
"I think we should run a few more tests, just to be sure."
Before Emma could respond, the nurse entered, holding a syringe in her gloved hands. The needle gleamed in the fluorescent light, and Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't due for any shots. "I don't think I need any injections," she said, her voice trembling. Dr. Keller's smile didn't falter.
"It's a precautionary measure. Nothing to worry about."
The nurse approached, but Emma instinctively pulled back. The doctor's expression hardened.
"We do this for everyone,"
he said, his tone almost dismissive.
"It's just part of the process."
Reluctantly, Emma allowed the nurse to administer the injection. The sharp sting of the needle was followed by a strange heaviness spreading through her limbs. Her vision blurred and her mind began to fog, but the more she tried to resist, the more exhausted she felt. When she finally came to, she was no longer in the examination room. She blinked several times, trying to clear the haze from her eyes. She was lying on a cold metal table in a dimly lit, abandoned basement. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old wood. The walls were lined with shelves of forgotten medical supplies, broken glass vials, rusty tools, and piles of yellowed paperwork. Her heart began to race as she tried to move, but her limbs were weak, still heavy from the injection. She swung her legs off the table and stood shakily, her mind trying to piece together what had happened. The basement was completely silent, except for the faint hum of a fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Panic gripped her chest. Where am I? She spotted a door at the far end of the basement. With no other choice, she staggered toward it, her fingers trembling as she reached for the doorknob. The door creaked open, revealing a small, narrow stairway leading up. She tried to open it further, but it felt heavy, as if something was pushing back on the other side. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed behind her. Emma froze, her breath catching in her throat. The footsteps grew louder, drawing closer.
"Emma?"
A voice called out, cold and menacing. She knew that voice. She turned slowly, her body trembling with fear. There he was, standing at the bottom of the stairs, his face expressionless. In his hand, he held a syringe, its needle gleaming under the fluorescent lights.
"There's nothing to be afraid of, Emma. I'm your doctor after all,"
he said, his voice calm, almost soothing. But there was no kindness in his eyes, only something dark, something predatory. Emma's mind raced. She wasn't going to let him inject her again, not this time. As he stepped forward, she lunged toward the nearest shelf, knocking over a jar of glass vials in her haste. The vials shattered on the floor. In one swift motion, she grabbed a jagged piece of the broken glass and held it out in front of her, trembling but determined. Dr. Keller paused, his eyes narrowing, but he didn't stop. He took another step forward, as if unbothered by the threat. With no time to think, Emma spun around and bolted for the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She wasn't sure if she could make it out, but she didn't have a choice. Dr. Keller started to follow, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. Emma reached the top of the stairs and grabbed the door handle, wrenching it open with all her strength. The door gave way, and she stumbled out into the back alley of the office building. She didn't stop to look back. She ran through the alley, her lungs burning, adrenaline pushing her forward, but as she reached the end of the alley, she collided with something, or rather, someone. A figure appeared out of nowhere, blocking her path. It was the receptionist. She smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the same hollow, empty look Emma had seen when she first arrived.
Where do you think you're going?
She asked, her voice too soft, too sweet. Emma didn't hesitate. She raised the shard of glass in her hand and slashed it across the receptionist's arm, not giving her a chance to react. The woman stumbled back, but Emma didn't stop. She shoved her aside and dashed into the street. Breathing hard, Emma didn't look back. She ran until her legs gave out, only stopping when she reached the safety of a nearby cafe, where she collapsed onto the sidewalk, gasping for air. The nightmare was over. Or so she thought. But as she looked back at the office building across the street, she saw Dr. Keller standing in the window watching her. His smile stretched wide. Emma immediately went to the authorities. The police raided Dr. Keller's office, but there was no sign of him. Only a note on his desk, reading, "See you at your next appointment, Emma."